The sound of falling leaves in the cold wind drifted like a melody from an unknown world. In the small northern New York town of Oswego, on the banks of the Hudson River, the first rays of morning sunlight pierced the mist, slowly resting on the rooftops of old wooden houses. At the train station stood a young man in a dark brown uniform, a government appointment letter folded neatly in his pocket. His name was James William Herbert, age 24. His face carried a strange mix of fear of the unknown, the weight of duty, and unshakable pride. Beside him stood a woman, Margaret Herbert, James's mother. Her eyes shimmered with tears. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. "Are you really leaving, James?" "Mother, when the country calls, a son cannot stay silent." She quietly handed him a small white envelope. The handwriting trembled slightly. "Wherever you are, come back alive, my son." James wanted to reply, but his throat was dry. The train's whistle echoed across the platform. Within moments, he climbed aboard and pressed his hand against the window glass. His mother's face grew smaller and smaller, fading behind a curtain of smoke. The train began to move. Fields, houses, rivers, all slipped away behind him. In his chest pocket, the letter seemed to beat like a living heart. Fort Benning, Georgia. The summer heat. Here, thousands of young men were being forged for a new kind of war. Training began at 5 a.m. Rows of tents, mud-soaked fields, roaring trucks, and the fierce shouts of drill sergeants. "Move! Move! You think the enemy waits for you?" James ran silently in line. Muscles burned, but his eyes stayed firm. At night, when others collapsed into their bunks, James would take out the letter and read it slowly, as if the words themselves kept him alive. One night, his companion, Private Allen Brooks, asked, "Why do you read that letter every night?" James smiled. "Because those few lines remind me why I'm still alive." Allen chuckled. "When the war's over, I'll buy a violin and play in the streets of New York." "I hope you do," James replied softly. From his diary, March 1942. "We begin parachute training today. Floating in the air made the world seem so small. But when I hit the ground, I realized war's soil is heavy. First promotion and first mission. After 6 months, James earned promotion to sergeant, commanding a small squad. Their mission? Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa. They sailed across the vast Atlantic. James wrote in his journal, "The sea reminds me of my mother. As far as I can see, I feel her prayers stretching even further." Algiers, 1942. The smell of sand and blood. Their ship anchored near Algiers. Smoke filled the horizon. Distant gunfire echoed. Some soldiers were thrilled, others terrified. James quietly pulled the letter from his pocket and held it. Their first encounter with death came swiftly. A tank shell struck, killing their commander, Lieutenant Harris. James took command immediately. "Herbert, lead the men." He didn't flinch. Through dust, fire, and screams, he advanced. By noon, the position was theirs. Golden sunlight above, red stains on the ground. That night, they sat around a campfire. Allen strummed a piece of wood like a violin bow. James said, "I never knew death could be so close." Allen replied, "Death comes close, but when we stand together, life still wins." Sand clung to their uniforms, their hair, even the letter's envelope. But to James, that letter meant life.
Letter, November 1942. Dear Mother, I've set foot on the sands of Africa. Even the sun here seems angry. I don't know when I'll return, but I remember your words. Even in war, men find reasons to live. If I never come back, know that I've fulfilled my duty. Your son, James. Tunisia, 1943. They were sent to Kasserine Pass, where the legendary Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, awaited. The battle began at dawn, explosions everywhere. Allen shouted, "Down! Down!" A shell landed beside him. Silence. James ran, but all he found was dust and blood. Allen's broken violin bow lay nearby. That night, James wrote, "War isn't just about saving nations. It's about saving memories." Operation Husky, Sicily, 1943. The moon hung half-covered over the Mediterranean. Dozens of parachutes floated in the air like white ghosts. James, now with the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, jumped into the storm. Strong winds blew him miles off course. He landed near a small village, Licata. Only 2 others survived the drop with him, Corporal Hayes and Private Dixon. No radio contact, no backup. They took shelter in an abandoned villa. Inside, James found a German diary, Projekt Feuerlicht, Roma, 1943. On one page, in Latin, a weapon not of metal, but of mind. He didn't yet know this would one day become part of U.S. intelligence history. The dawn ambush. German patrols approached. Hayes whispered, "3 trucks incoming!" James said, "Hold fire until they cross the wall." Minutes later, chaos, gunfire. Dixon was wounded, Hayes was killed. Before dying, Hayes handed James a photo of his wife and baby. "If you live, give this to them. Tell them I fought bravely." James later wrote, "The greatest fear in war is not death, it's being forgotten." The rain and the promise. For days they wandered through the storm. Dixon fell sick with fever. James tore his own uniform to make a pillow, tried to start a fire. Dixon asked, "Why don't you give up, Sergeant?" "Because my mother said, if I give up, I won't come home alive." A lightning flash. In the distance, the faint light signals of Allied troops. They were saved. From then on, he became known as the Ghost Sergeant. The Secret File, Project Firelight. After the mission, James turned the diary over to Lieutenant Raymond Cole. Cole asked, "Do you know what this means?" James said, "Only that it could change how men fight or think." The file was sent to London marked Top Secret, Mind Weapon Theory. But James secretly kept a copy.
Rain, mud, wire, and exhaustion. He now served with the 36th Infantry Division. Among his new soldiers was Private Lewis Carter, only 19. "Sir, will we win?" "Surviving is winning," James replied. April 27, 1944, the day he vanished. Under heavy shell fire, the unit broke apart. James saw a wounded German soldier and ran to help him, despite orders. A mortar fell. Then silence. When the smoke cleared, Only torn cloth, blood, and a broken compass remained. He was listed missing in action. Home front grief. The Army's letter arrived. We regret to inform you that Sergeant James W. Herbert has been declared missing in action since April 27, 1944. Margaret Herbert opened her drawer and took out the old envelope. "Wherever you are, come back alive, my son." She placed it by the window and whispered, "He'll come home. I know he will." Rumors and a mystery. In Italy, a local woman in Cisterna di Latina later claimed an American soldier had sought refuge in her home, injured, carrying a burnt letter. The only visible words were, "Come back alive." A month later, a mysterious envelope arrived in New York. No return address. Inside was one line: "Mother, I kept my promise. M.W.H." Years later, forgotten files. In 1947, U.S. counterintelligence logged recovered artifacts from Italian sector. It mentioned Herbert, J.W. Location noted, Cisterna di Latina. The file was sealed as confidential 47B. Margaret waited every year until her death in 1978. Her gravestone read, "A mother who never stopped believing." Rediscovery. 1995 to 2023. In 1995, archivist Thomas Riley found the forgotten file. Inside were a copy of the blood-stained letter, a fragment of the Project Firelight diary, a photo of James holding a half-burned letter. On the back, "Some promises never die, J.W.H., 1944. In 2022, while restoring St. Paul's Church in Oswego, workers found a small wooden box sealed inside a wall. Inside was a letter, dry bloodstains, and a photograph. It read, "If you find this, tell my mother I kept my promise. M.W.H." DNA testing in 2023 confirmed a 99.8% match with Herbert's descendants. An unmarked grave in Italy was later identified by a single button engraved Herbert, N.Y., 1942. Closure, 2023. In December 2023, at Arlington National Cemetery, a new gravestone was unveiled. Sergeant James W. Herbert, 1917 to 1944, lost but never forgotten. Beside it, encased in glass, rests the letter from his mother. At the Smithsonian's exhibition, Letters from the Lost, Voices of Forgotten Soldiers, historian Eleanor Smith stood before it and said, "This letter isn't just from one mother. It's from every mother who sent her son down a road with no return." And deep within the Smithsonian's archives, sealed away, remains one final page from Project Firelight, the last line ever written by Sergeant Herbert. "The mind remembers what history forgets." J.W. Herbert, 1944.